Dean, efficiency, productivity, pretty important in any job, right?
Yes.
But I think in manufacturing and warehousing, distribution, T&L, it's pretty mission critical.
Yes. To be as efficient as possible. Yeah. Yes. And productivity. Yes.
You can't take too much of a lazy, like whatever kind of attitude.
Really.
We'll get this stuff out when we feel like it.
Yeah.
We'll find it when we
what
can.
What KPI? No, don't worry about it. Yeah, we'll get there someday.
I mean, I'm pretty sure we here at BlueStar would not be where we are without our top-notch team that we have in our warehouse.
That's right.
But we've also been backing them up with some next-level automation, some tools to make their jobs faster and smarter.
Yep.
So does everyone feel the same way about that? I would hope so. But that's the subject of our latest end user survey.
Yeah, I love
where
these.
we went out and asked 100 leaders in those industries to talk about their daily challenges, their beliefs on how their workplaces operate. Spoiler alert, they are a little overconfident, I think, about what's actually going on in their business, or just obscuring the actual facts.
Right.
And we, again, call out some of those contradictions that may inform how you can approach them with your solutions. Even better, we brought in a guest to talk about this today. So it's not just Dean and I riffing about something that we may not really even know enough about.
Yeah.
We got Matt Sterner from Honeywell joining us today. They're also the ones who sponsored the surveys. We appreciate that. He's going to share his thoughts and help us understand that data. So get out your tape measure.
Yep. What?
Sell some air. Find a piece of paper to scribble on. All this will make sense as you get through the podcast.
Yes.
I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Welcome to Blue Star Nation. Blue Star Nation podcast is brought to you by ELO. You may be familiar with ELO's flexible I-Series displays, but now they've been upgraded for the most demanding use cases.
Wait, we're upgrading?
Upgrading.
Nice.
For demanding use cases.
Yes, demanding.
It's like somebody's just like, I want my screen now.
No, I don't think it's that.
That's not it?
No,
okay. The I-Series steel combines the durability of a stainless steel chassis with the flexibility of Android, complete with a I speak well. Sorry, Elo. Complete with a chemically strengthened touch display available in 10-inch, 15-inch, and 22-inch sizes. Android 14 OS, integrated power over Ethernet, and superior IP ratings to protect the device from the demands of industrial environments and commercial kitchens. Let's dig into that durability a little bit more.
Let's do.
An IP64 rated front, IP54 in the back. Is that like, business in the front, party around the back, something like that?
I don't know, something like that.
I don't know how that works. Easy to clean, corrosion resistant, reducing contamination. There are sealed cable covers and rounded corners.
Yep.
It's combined with the integrated Visa mounting and ELO's exceptional support, including security, seamless provisioning, and proprietary APIs for easy Android updates. Finally, the I-Series Steel is ready for the future with a fused AI accelerator in the Qualcomm 6490 chipset.
There you go.
Offering astonishing performance at low power.
That is future-proofing.
I think that qualifies as an upgrade.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's the kind of the definition of it.
Well designed, yes.
Check out the link in the show notes or contact the Blue Star ELO team to learn more. All right, our guest today is Matt Sterner. He is the global customer marketing leader for transport, logistics, and warehousing for Honeywell. I think we found someone that actually can speak to this topic. We were just riffing.
Way better than you and I.
We were just riffing before we went live that usually it's you and me just talking about these surveys. And it's nice to have an actual expert
we become
in-house.
Instant experts, but we need some actual experts.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Matt, welcome to the show. Tell us a little about yourself, your background, and what your day-to-day is like over there at Honeywell.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here today. So I'm Matt Sterner. I'm the global customer marketing leader for transportation, logistics, and warehousing products at Honeywell. So I've got responsibility for all of our devices and software that go into the warehouse to help make them more efficient, more productive, but also on the transportation logistics side. So some of those different verticals, if it's airlines, if it's trucking and transportation, how do we help there? My day-to-day, spend a lot of time doing some research and understanding the market, talking with our sales team and our people in our regions around the world to learn a little bit more about what they see on the ground day-to-day, and then, kind of putting that together with what I know about the industry and trying to help our team provide the right information to our customers and make everybody as successful as they possibly can be in whichever vertical they're in.
Awesome.
Nice. I think it's safe to say that he eats and breathes transportation logistics and warehousing.
Yeah, he's got the goods.
There you go.
Well, I appreciate that you mentioned, efficiency and productivity being a big part of what you're doing, because that's kind of what the goal of this survey was to kind of gauge what's happening in these industries and understand where, efficiencies were or weren't and where productivity could be improved. And obviously that lends itself to a lot of what Honeywell is doing with a lot of their products. So first of all, thank you, Honeywell, for sponsoring this survey. We appreciate your guys' support.
Absolutely.
Of us going out and gathering this data.
Yep.
Before we start, I do want to give a quick overview of kind of, who we talked to so people can understand, what the layout of this survey was. As always, there's going to be a link in the show notes. Go to BlueStar Nation, nation.bluestarinc.com, but I'll put a direct link to this article for you to follow along if you'd like. But basically, we reached out to 100, executive, managerial, leadership type roles in manufacturing and warehousing. We were asking him a variety of questions, but to give you a kind of a breakdown of the seniority we were looking at there, about 58% were either director or VP level, and another 42% were managerial level. So again, these are decision makers. These are the folks that are making decisions, the folks that are seeing what's happening in their business and getting the feedback what's happening in their business. We had a pretty wide variety of job functions we covered here. There's like a pretty good representation of all of them, from materials management, operations, T&L, IT, and then just executive leadership in general. So we wanted to make sure we got a nice broad swath of folks that have a lot of potential input on what's going on out there. So with that as the caveat and the groundwork of what we saw in the survey here, I want to start off by talking about, again, that kind of maybe efficiency and productivity, because there seemed to be a lot of confidence from the folks that we surveyed about their inventory accuracy. 72% said that they felt really good, either great or really good about their inventory accuracy. 95% felt like they were very confident that they were maximizing space on their trucks when they're loading up shipments.
Really?
And then another 63% said they felt that visibility into outbound shipments was also really good. So it was high marks that people were giving on this stuff, saying they felt pretty good about all this, which I don't think is what most of us would probably assume is happening out there.
Right?
But I want from an expert, from someone who does hear these conversations and hear what's happening out there. Does that track with what you see and hear out there in the market, and why or why not?
I think those people were overly optimistic in their assessment there. Just from what I've seen over the years and people that I've talked to, it's pretty much the complete opposite, right? The inventory is always a concern. Everybody's trying to figure out how they can get better at maintaining and managing inventory and making sure that the counts are accurate. When we start looking at utilizing trailer space is probably one of the biggest areas that companies usually focus on. I'm going to go back to my days as a procurement expert for transportation and logistics, and I used to purchase transportation for aftermarket parts delivery for Daimler Truck and Mercedes-Benz USA. And one of the biggest things that we looked at was how much air we shipped every night in the trailer. Right? So from our distribution centers to our dealerships and the reverse logistics, and we always were looking at how full can we get the trailer and where do we think we're at, and then what do we do if we have too much freight? But there were very few instances where there were too much freight. It was more or less how can we put more freight in the trailer and still make it work. So I think I think somebody's being cautiously optimistic that they're utilizing that. And then as far as visibility after the fact, I think a lot of times, shippers can say, hey, product left the building. Where is it? Nobody knows. It's on a truck and it might get there, it might not. So, we've got our ETA of what we think it's going to be. So yeah, I think that's someone being extremely optimistic in their assessment, not really wanting to address some of the challenges that they're possibly facing. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's funny. I mean, when 95% said that they're moderately, extremely confident that was their trucks are loaded. Outlier. I'm like, wait a minute. So if you look at the statistics, I asked AI, it came back with in 2023, only 43% of truckloads moved partially empty. So, I mean, it's like almost 50% of them, have some room with an average of 29 linear feet within that trailer that's unused deck space. I never thought of it. Or are we shipping air? Right there. That's a lot of air that's being shipped around. So, there's a little bit of a disconnect, right? And maybe if you go back and kind of look at some of the seniority. To me, I do like the seniority breakdown of this particular survey. 42% are managers. And what I liked about that is that was a little bit closer to the ground, right? Like these are the people that are in tune with what's actually going on. They're also the people that might be giving you a little bit of, what was that? An optimistic portrayal of what's actually happening in there if they're 95% confident. And then when you look a little bit further down the survey, and I love this, some of those claims are a little bit bold because 45% of them are still using tape measure and manual entry for box dimensions. So I don't know, Matt. I mean, you can't get really highly exact about your spacing and stuff if you're using, tape measure and right. I mean, just by its nature, you're going to miss a couple feet.
You're just eyeballing it.
You're just kind of eyeballing it, right? Do you see that? Go ahead.
That's the thing, right? So you do see a lot of that. People still trying to estimate what the size of the package is, or even when you start shipping product, right? You've got your dimensions on the package, and you think it's one thing, and then you hand it off, and then the freight company picks it up and they do their dimensioning, and then they come back and say, well, actually the dims are this, right? So you're off. So your cost calculations are off. Your utilization of your trailer is off. So you need to make sure that stuff is accurate too. And the other big thing we see is the package size. So, I mean, you guys probably get Amazon deliveries at your house, and, they take this pen and they drop it in a box that's, 12 by 12 by 12 or something crazy. And like, there you go. Or it's a couple things that rattle around inside of there. If you think about it, you might be utilizing the trailer based on the cube of the box, but there's a lot of air inside of there too, right? So it's that piece of to understand what you're shipping, how to optimize the packaging that you're using, but then also how to make sure you get the right amount of product in the trailer to take advantage of the space that's there.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And maybe we'll get into this. The other part of the survey that I want to kind of hover on a little bit is that 72% said their inventory counts were almost always or often matched the physical counts, which, inventory, because some of this dug into, I know this is more enterprise, and I think enterprise has a better pulse on exactly what their inventory looks like and all that kind of. But when you start getting down in the SMB and they're truly still using clipboards and stuff like that, I mean, order inventory accuracy is much more of an issue, I think. If they're not using some type of automation or barcoding or something like that, there's just, it's not that accurate.
Yeah. I had the same reaction as you when I looked at this, was like I feel like this is a disconnect between like an executive level or like high level, C-level, VP, director level maybe, and what's actually happening on the ground where maybe they're being told like, everything's going great. We're doing good. Everything looks
We're utilizing
fine.
the space. We got right. Yeah.
And they're just like, okay, well, that's what they told me out there. But versus, and to be fair, like I'm curious, I should have dug a little further into the raw data or whatever and figured out like, hey, how many of the managerial level folks are actually saying this? But even then, I think there could be a little bit of rose-colored glasses, a little bit of optimism. I think kind of the way we painted in this article too, though, is that maybe it's a little bit of like hesitance to acknowledge that there are issues and a little reticence to say like, our inventory counts probably aren't as best as they could be, and we're not, to your point, maybe we're maximizing our space by filling it up with as many boxes as possible. But to your point, how many of those boxes are actually full themselves? Yeah. Are you just kind of filling it for the sake of filling it? And does it actually mean something?
Well, I think there's a lot in here. But again, I'll just say, I think the large enterprises, they're getting a better handle of it. It's just the SMB, I think. When you look at it, in fact, another study said that 39% of small businesses in the U.S. still track inventory manually or not at all. Yeah. So if you're doing it manually or not at all, of course you're not going to have a lot of visibility there, right? Exactly. That has some challenges. Yeah,
too. And that came up in the further data when we started asking about processes. And again, you mentioned the tape measure thing. They said there was also half of the folks said that their teams are contacted daily by customers asking for shipment ETAs. That tells me you don't have that transparency. Yeah. Like if 63% said they have good or full visibility on their shipments, but half of them acknowledge they're getting calls about it, that doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up.
There's don't balance there.
And sometimes I feel bad, Matt, I know you got a comment, but sometimes I feel bad about the SMB market having to compete with the Amazons of the world, where, our behavior and our expectation is, I mean, my 14-year-old daughter goes onto the Amazon app. Oh, the driver's 3 stops away. It's going to be here in 15 minutes.
Right.
How do you compete with that? If you're an SMB?
Well, if you're not a multi-billion-dollar multinational.
You got to get into the automation. You got to start incorporating some of these things to help out. Anyway.
Exactly. Matt, what were you going to add there?
I was just going to say that's where a lot of those guys, if they look at from that small to mid-sized business, leveraging some of the 3PLs, right, that are out there to help, take on some of that burden, right, of packing and shipping and then providing the technology behind that. So I think that's a big opportunity for that segment of the market, is to say, hey, we may not have the expertise to do it, or we may not have the tools to do it, but there's somebody out there that we can definitely leverage to help us with that. So
that's a great point.
It's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about the automation side of this, obviously, because when we talk about these things and where there are efficiencies or gaps, and again, what we know is actually happening versus what people are saying they're happening, there are opportunities out there with inventory management, data entry, order picking. So what do you think is keeping, at the enterprise level, but also maybe getting down into that SMB level, from putting those manual processes aside, and then maybe talk about some of the solutions that you think are honestly making a difference, where people can go out and get wins? Because I know, a lot of these businesses say, hey, I would love to do this, but shutting down my business for even 4 hours could, potentially cripple us, and could be a game changer for us being in business. So, what do you say to when folks are telling you that and are looking for automation, but aren't quite sure how they're supposed to get there?
Well, I think we need to look at where they're at today, right? So the majority of warehouses operate, in a very manual way. So it's I think it's 80% of warehouses still operate with manual tasks, right? So without automation. So companies that understand what exists today, right? So there's varying degrees of automation. And I think when people think of it, they think like a dark warehouse where it's robots just picking and packing and shipping and there's nobody in there, right? But that's not really the reality for most people, right? Most people are either somewhere between, hey, I've got nothing but people picking on, from a paper pick list and a clipboard, and then I've got the other ones all the way over here that are fully automated. Most people are somewhere in the middle, right? If you look at the bell curve, that's the majority fall in that middle space, where they've got something that they're doing, or they've got some ideas that they want to try. So I think it's just really showing them what are the different degrees of automation that you can go with. So, and it has to be something that's flexible and that works with them, because as their business changes or grows, or as their product mix changes, they have to have something that can easily adapt to that. So that's what we've seen with customers and utilizing AMRs in their warehouses, right? So something that you can easily guide it through to provide some assistance to the picker, or like our own voice guided solution. So voice guided work for picking applications. It automates that task, right? Which is probably the most labor intensive task in the warehouse. You're being able to take that paper pick sheet, to digitize it, and then feed that information to the picker through the headset. So they're hands-free, eyes up. They don't have to worry about carrying a device. They don't have to worry about scanning. It makes them that much more productive and that much more efficient to help, especially with the issues that warehouses have today with, labor availability and getting people to show up every day and being able to get that throughput with the exact number of workers that you have, right? So it tends to be difficult to bring in new people. So you just kind of have to show them, what are some of the basics and some of the easier things that you could do from an automation perspective. And it's not necessarily, conveyor systems and sortation systems and all that stuff and physical infrastructure. A lot of it can be through the digitization process.
I love that advice of starting small, because when you look at the SMB market, they really just need some kind of implementation of this. And I'm going to use that phrase, varying degrees of automation. You're right. You don't have to shut down and then 4 hours later you got robots running around and RFID antennas everywhere tracking everything.
It ain't that easy anyway. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't even know that they would ever get there, but they can start off with simple barcoding or something along those lines, or a voice to pick. There are certain degrees of automation that you can implement to get them off the clipboard, to get them out of the Excel sheets, and help them. Because as the survey called, even the executives admit that all this manual, ness to it, or in the paperwork, it leads to delays in processing, increased labor costs, data errors, customer complaints, lost business. So they already know some of the pain points. You simply need to highlight those and then show them, a little bit of the path of how the automation can help.
Yeah, I'm all on board with you with the small win stuff too. Like,
right.
I think it's a great way, especially if you're working with a customer maybe you're not overly familiar with, you don't have an established relationship, or you're doing something very minor with them and you'd like to grow. If you're going in there, again, if you're trying to pitch like, hey, we're going to overhaul this all, we're going to start from scratch, shut down your company for a couple of weeks, and we'll get you up and running with robots and cameras and all that stuff. No, they're going to laugh you right out. They'll be like, yeah, thanks so much. We appreciate your time. Get out. But it's that the little wins will give you a lot of credence and a lot of, and just that, familiarity and a trust that they'll get from you. You're like, hey, there was one little problem that we've been dealing with that we maybe never even thought we could solve, or just didn't bother to take the time. These guys helped us solve it. So, let's turn to them the next time we have an issue. It's just building that trust and that relationship over time. So I appreciate that.
Show them an ROI too, right? If you can prove out that, hey, we can do this and it's relatively quick and painless for you, and we can get you paid back in a short period of time on your investment, they look at that and say, okay, that's cool. You've created, like you said, that small win that now we can say, all right, that worked here. Let's try it in another area, or let's roll it out to another warehouse. So, you kind of snowball after that, right? With some of those small improvements.
Yeah. And I liked in the survey, I think you can just pick up on this because we asked, what are the tasks that are still dominant? Number one is inventory management, then data entry and paperwork, and then order picking. Well, all right, we'll just knock those off one at a time. Let's start off with inventory management. Let's get you squared away, so that you now have more accurate visibility in your inventory and you can management. Oh, now we'll maybe leverage some of that into order picking.
Right.
Now we can automate some of that through barcoding and stuff like that. I mean, right? So it's a little bit of a transition.
Like the inventory manager, something that could be something as simple as, hey, let's upgrade your barcode scanners. You've been using these, 1D scanners that legacy scanners you've had for 20 years now, and they're always breaking down on you. Can't read half the barcodes that you've got. It can't figure out if a barcode is slightly smudged or something. It could be just something as simple as that. Is like, let's upgrade and let's make barcode scanning a lot faster. Or it could be as complicated as maybe getting into an RFID system. But again, the little stuff I think is what's going to help you get a long way there, and it's going to just help them understand, like, oh, these guys are just looking out for my best interest here, and not just trying to sell me a bunch of stuff necessarily.
Right.
So Matt, let's talk about a couple of things that we asked about was downtime and safety, because this is a critical, mission critical stuff for a lot of these businesses. There were a couple of interesting stats that came out of that. So 51% of the respondents said that they had daily or weekly downtime in their equipment, and then if you add that up to, if you go up to monthly, where it was at least monthly there was some kind of downtime, 84% said they were having troubles at least up to monthly, and again half of them originally were having downtime daily or weekly. And then on the safety side of things, I always think it's interesting to ask about that, because it's one of those things I think sometimes people don't think about where there could be opportunities to introduce some technology that do help out with safety. So the top safety concerns were machinery accidents, vehicular accidents, falling objects in improper storage, and manual handling injuries. So let's talk about those. Let's talk about the downtime. Let's talk about the safety aspect of things. Should those be things that are leading conversations for VARs to go in and talk to these customers and again, maybe find some of those little wins and problem solve some things that we know are core issues?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity now, especially with a lot of the sensor data that exists on, say, the machinery and equipment, right? Being able to pull that stuff in, to do the predictive analytics on some of that and feed that information back. So if they've got a maintenance department, if there's things that need to be routinely maintained, if there's repairs or inspections that need to be done, there's ways that you can utilize that to help drive that process to make it more efficient, but also even sometimes just something as simple as scheduling it out, making sure that there's a basic maintenance schedule that they follow on equipment, right? I know in and out of like small manufacturing companies, or if you look at even some warehouses that have some equipment in there, a lot of times that's the most neglected piece of it. It's like they're just focused on trying to get things done and get stuff out the door to keep shipments moving, keep product flowing through, and kind of the maintenance aspect of it sometimes falls by the wayside. So there's huge opportunity, I think, with that, especially with the sensor data that's available today.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All these areas are becoming modernized, and there's opportunities for that because, safety and downtime is now you're getting into real cost.
Yep.
Like if you're talking to the C-suite or whatnot, they're, I'm sure, super aware of when accidents happen or something like that occurs.
Conveyor belt stops running for a couple hours.
Yeah. So, integrating that into the overall conversation of making just the overall process more efficient, more visible, and then adding in some safety concerns and how this can help to mitigate some of that. I'd throw it on the table. It's a good win.
Yeah.
Especially with the safety piece, right? There's such an impact, right? With the people you want everyone to come to work. You want them to go back home with all their fingers and toes. You want them to be able to not, be out of work for something foolish. So I go back to decades ago, right? As an intern in college, like there was a company that I worked for, and it was one of the things is like, hey, take a look at some of the injury data and see what you can get from that. It's like there's a lot of things that are just like sprains and strains were always the biggest thing, right? That somebody would turn or twist or move just right, right and cause an injury. And a lot of it's just basic things that you can do, even if it's just cleaning up aisles in a warehouse or making sure, like you said, boxes are pushed back, not falling off of ledges and things like that on shelving and whatever. But yeah, it's just something as simple as a Pareto, looking at it that way, marking out areas like it might be in the warehouse or, hey, we've seen some, an uptick in injuries in this area. And then you go take a look. One of the biggest things from Lean is go and see, right? Go take a look at it and see what it is, where you see the problems or, what can you do? And a lot of times it's usually something simple that you can do to implement it and fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, the preventative nature of what this technology can do is really, really fascinating, and sometimes kind of deviating a little bit. I've seen solutions out there that are starting to use cameras that are already existing in the warehouse, maybe for security reasons and whatnot. Well, now you can start using some of that camera data to do predictive things of how you have your shop laid out, and maybe there's better ways to lay it out so that patterns aren't crossing or, forklifts aren't crossing where humans are, and they can devise better, more efficient usage of the space. So that gets into a safety. So I love where Matt was going. Sensors and camera technology, all these things are kind of this confluence of technology that's helping to mitigate safety.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also using like the locationing data off the devices, right? Like you said, so you don't have people crossing paths with equipment, doing that pick path optimization throughout the warehouse to say, hey, these products should be, from a slotting perspective, like where should we put these? All the high runners should be close together. So there's steps. You make sure that when we do the path through the warehouse, that we optimize it as much as possible so that there is few steps as possible to get the work done, to make it as efficient as possible. But then also, if you do have fork trucks and things like that moving through there, making sure that those people and machines don't intersect at any point, because whenever that happens, that's always a bad day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's what we've done in our warehouse. It's constantly modifying, and there's areas where, yes, high run rate items are placed in areas, and forklifts never even come near it, type of a thing. Replenishment is done in a different way, type of a thing. So yeah, there's once you start getting into it, there's all kinds of opportunities to make these worlds much more efficient and safe.
Yeah, what's the data of it all too? Like, if, I think that can be a nice pitch. Maybe if you are working with someone who thinks that they have it all figured out and all sorted out, and they might be just in a mode
95% do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's back on the truck. But anyway,
they might be just in a mode of like accepting, certain levels of, tolerating certain levels of inefficiencies or whatever. And I think sometimes it can be useful to push back and to kind of, make them a little bit uncomfortable about, hey, you don't have to tolerate some of this stuff. Like, sure, there's no business that's going to be 100% perfectly efficient and productive all times and never have issues happen. But you could at least say, hey, if you're dealing with a 15% downtime rate on some of your equipment, what if we shave that down to 12% with just a little bit of, understanding of what's going on, a little bit of data and insight and analysis. Even that little 3% could, could represent hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think it's, Exactly. Yep. I think it's on, it's on us. It's on the resellers to push back a little bit and maybe have some slightly uncomfortable conversations, burst a few bubbles about how efficient and productive you guys actually are and help them out with some solutions.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, this is good stuff. And we're going to have Matt wrap things up here for us in a moment to tell you a little bit about how Honeywell can help you go out there and solve some of these problems and win this business. Nice. First of all, a quick note of what's happening around BlueStar Nation. Hey, Thanksgiving is right around the corner. We're recording this about a month before, but we're thinking about it already. And naturally, we're going to put a little tech spin to all things Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So we have a special episode upcoming, which I'm going to commit myself to this because we've got to fill some slots, but should be our 250th episode of the podcast.
Yes.
And we're going to call it The Tech That We're Thankful For. It's going to be myself, Dean, and Sarah Schlueter. We're going to be talking about the gadgets, innovations, the tools that we can't imagine a life without. And we would love for some of you to get in on the action as well. So feel free to send us a message with your own thoughts about what tech
could you not live without.
Yeah, what makes your world better on a day-to-day basis? What's some of the coolest things you've ever had or used that you just couldn't live without at this point? And we just may feature some of your comments on the show. Feel free to record your response as an audio file or a video and send that to us as well. And you might very well find yourself featured on the episode. So, of course, if you want to do that, there's a lot of different ways you can contact us as always. First of all, if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure you're following our YouTube channel, please.
Got to hit that
Leave
button.
us a comment down below. Right. We'd love to get that comment. That could be a perfect time for you to give us that, tech you're thankful for, or weigh in on this conversation. Tell us about some of the things that you've seen out in the marketplace. As always, check out our BlueStar Nation blog. You'll get a lot more detail about this article and a little more in depth on some of the data that we collected from folks out there in the field. We do lots of these articles all the time. There's a lot of good stuff there. Recommend checking it out.
Absolutely.
And of course, send your ideas into us. Let us know what other stuff you'd like us to survey folks about. Let us know what other topics you'd like us to talk about here on the podcast. We're always happy to hear from you. You can always find us on the BlueStar LinkedIn page, but of course, you can email us directly at any time, nation@bluestarinc.com. All right, let's wrap things up. Let's start with a little VAR value here.
Yes.
And Matt, we only kind of scratched the surface of some of what was on the survey. And I know we kind of sent the raw data over to you to look through too if you had a chance. But is there any other findings in the survey that stood out to you? And then maybe, as you answer that, talk about how Honeywell is helping resellers go out and really tackle these productivity and efficiency questions with their customers. And again, helping them get some of those small wins.
I just think one thing that was interesting was the brand loyalty piece, right?
Yeah, and, right.
Customers really care about that, whereas a lot of times people think that it doesn't really matter, or if you walk in with one device that can do the same thing as your competitor, that your customer will just flip because it's speeds and feeds are great, right? But it shows that the brand loyalty piece is still really important. So it's not just the device. It's more that relationship that, the end customers have with their suppliers, and they really want to, continue that relationship. If they've had a positive experience, it's going to be really tough to pry that device from their cold, dead hands, if you will, to get them to switch over to somebody else. Right. So I think that was an interesting piece, that there's still that big thing around that brand loyalty aspect of any decision that a company makes when it comes to technology.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, when you look at this, I wasn't really expecting that either.
Yeah,
but it is high quality, reliability, high brand matching. What they have, I mean, it's important, right? Which is good news for us.
It is,
because we sell enterprise devices, and the brand matters, and we talk about that.
We've been asking that on a lot of our surveys lately, just purposefully trying to understand, does that actually matter to people? And inevitably, it seems in almost every industry and every technology type we talk about, folks do tend to say, yeah, I would like to keep things together. And I think another angle of that is the integration piece of it.
Yeah, right.
Which, granted, we live in a world where a lot of stuff is fairly interoperable, but I think also there's a perception sometimes that you do need to have everything from a similar brand or a connected brand in order to make everything work together, especially, in personal life. If you live in the Apple ecosphere or the Android ecosphere, you might be more inclined to stick with that for all of your various devices.
Sure.
And I think sometimes that mentality can kind of bleed over into the business world too of, well, I'm sticking with the stuff that I know is all from the same brand because I know it works and it all works together, and that's what I want out of it. So Matt, then let's talk about that second part of that question. Then what are you guys up to out there? What is it like for you to go out and talk to folks about these challenges and how we're able to help them?
Yes, I mean it's it's always enjoyable to get out and talk to customers and understand what their pain points are, or even to help educate people, because there's still a lot of people out there that don't necessarily know who Honeywell is or what they do, right? So a lot of times I was at GITEX in Dubai a couple weeks ago, and we were talking with a bunch of different customers, and I had some come up and they go, "What do you guys do?" And I was like, "Well, we kind of do a little bit of everything." I was like, "But in the productivity space, and we're one of the big players in the market, providing the devices that are going to help with your warehouse, if it's retail or whatever, but in my domain, in the warehouse and transportation space, that, really helping you digitalize your processes, make things more accurate with that data capture and being able to utilize that data to help you make informed decisions about your business. And, we've got the software that stacks on top of the hardware to help make, things work better together, help make workers more efficient, give them a better experience throughout the day, so that, coming in to do some of the work in the warehouses is as enjoyable as it can be, right? It's not always one of the most glamorous things to do, but it's a job that needs to be done, and there's people that are doing it, and you got to make sure that they're happy doing what they're doing. Otherwise they're not going to come back. And if they don't come back, then you're kind of out of luck, right? You got nothing moving through the warehouse, nothing to ship to customers. So it's always that big thing, and it's kind of educating them that, we've been at this for decades. This is not like we just started doing this yesterday. We've got, a long list of large enterprise customers, but then there's also some small to mid-sized customers that we help service as well. And, being able to pry that competitor device away from some of these customers is something that we've gotten pretty good at over the last few years in some of the industries that we play in. And it's not just because of the device, it's the approach of the team at Honeywell and how we look at it, that we're solving problems for customers. We're not just trying to sell you widgets to do some scanning or, optimize your workflows. It's like, we're really looking at it from a relationship perspective, that how can we come in, how can we design a device that fits your application, that meets your needs? If you need a green dot aimer, for your scanner versus the red dot because of light conditions and things like that, or you need an enhanced, battery clip that holds the battery in the device if it gets dropped, or if you need some ultra rugged, boot put on it to make it so it can withstand the harsh environment that it operates in. Like, those are the things that we take it, into account from an engineering perspective, but then also saying, we really want to understand your problem, how you use it, so that when we do design the devices, that it's designed to fit in your ecosystem and in your vertical.
Really well said. I mean, Honeywell does a great job, I think, of leveraging the brand, but it's interesting to hear Matt say, well, sometimes not everybody realizes that we're in this PSS and we have these types of devices, and not just have them, but have them really well. And they're really well designed and engineered. When you get into some niche things like voice picking and stuff like that, clearly great solutions around that. And I've had the pleasure of working with the Honeywell teams kind of out in the field, and that's the nice thing about it, is that they have this breadth of service, and they can, just walk up and say, okay, what are your needs? And we can bring to bear all kinds of things to help facilitate that. And going back to the survey, I mean, when you look at it, wearables and voice, let's see here. A significant amount of people are saying that they're utilizing it on a daily basis, or periodically, or plan to use it. I would say somewhere in the 85% range fit in that category. So anyway, Honeywell's got great solutions for that.
I agree. Yeah. And I always appreciate also that Honeywell takes a very human element approach to a lot of these things. We've had Kelly Wood on the podcast a couple of times.
She's awesome. Yeah.
And she always speaks to the idea of the human element within automation and understanding workers, paying attention to their needs, understanding what drives them. And you mentioned earlier that idea of like just having a workplace that they enjoy coming to, because they get to work with interesting products, and and the work that they do and what they use to do their work is efficient and productive and useful for them. It's not frustrating all day long. And I just think there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for understanding the human aspect of all of this, especially in a world where we are constantly talking about automation and AI. And a lot of people are worried, like, what does that mean for me? Does that mean I'm not going to have a job at some point? Is someone looking to replace me?
That's one of the things that we've kind of touched on too, is the automation piece of it, right? Everyone gets nervous at thinking that it's coming to take their jobs, but they've done studies, and one was at the Port of Long Beach years ago, right, when they implemented automation at the port. The longshoremen were like, whoa, you're going to take our jobs, and this is not going to be okay. we don't want it. They wanted to keep it out, but then they allowed it in. They did the study and showed that after the automation was implemented, there were actually more workers working at the port, working more hours at the port, because they were able to move more containers through that, through the port, and created jobs as opposed to taking those jobs away. Right. Yeah. So it was just able to take out some of the manual aspect of the things that they do, or maybe the less safe things that they were doing, and allowing them to kind of focus on some higher level tasks and activities. So that's the other piece. People need to understand automation is not the enemy, right? It's something that can augment the worker experience and make things better. But then also, because of that increased throughput, you're able to hire some more people, or you're able to get more product moved through that same area in the same amount of time.
Absolutely. Yep. Agreed.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hey, if you're looking to learn more about them, some of this data, like I said, check out that article on BlueStar Nation.
Yes.
And if you obviously have some needs for productivity efficiency solutions with your manufacturing, warehouse, T&L customers, don't hesitate to reach out to our Honeywell team. They'll help hook you up. Let's wrap up, as always, with what's on our radar. This is the fun part of the show where we get to talk about something in the world of tech, innovation, science, the news, entertainment, whatever it is we just feel like talking about today and has caught our eye. So start with you, Matt. What's on your radar right now?
I think one of the biggest things that I've seen a lot of lately is I'm going to stick to a business topic that I think is pretty wild too, because I was at an AI symposium at the end of July in DC on AI and logistics. And one of the big things that they talked about was freight theft. And like, people are like, well, who's stealing freight? Like,
right.
Just like take a trailer. And it's like, yeah, people are stealing trailers, right? I mean, it's about a $35 billion industry in the US right now.
Holy moly, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So being able to vet carriers to make sure that you get someone who's honest and going to actually pick up your load and deliver it like they said they were going to, or that they're not, impersonating another carrier and that sort of stuff. That's one thing I've been kind of paying a lot of attention to lately. It's just something that I found very interesting, and companies are taking different approaches to trying to mitigate that risk, if you will. The traditional method of like validating carriers based on DOT inspections to say, hey, they've actually got assets that are out there in the field, they're being inspected by DOT, so this must be a legit asset-based carrier. Well, then there's other ones that are pretending to be a carrier that are really not. They could be stealing MC numbers or US DOT numbers and putting them on the side of their truck and showing up and picking stuff up. And or there's some that are making deliveries and they're doing it consistently, then all of a sudden they're the ones that snatches that load that's worth, a few $100,000, right? And driving off with it. But then, there's companies out there now with camera networks set up validating that there's actually trucks driving around with that on the door, helping to identify where the theft is and recover some of that freight. So it's something that's pretty crazy. I think that to see that being a $35 billion,
that's a big number
to the economy right now. So
That's a big number.
It's one of those things I just wouldn't have thought about. Like, you go out and you enlist a logistics company or whatever, maybe to help you out with shipping stuff, and you just assume that that truck gets backed out of the door and it's someone reputable.
Fool. Yes, exactly. We're the fools. I just got done watching The Sopranos, and when there's the whole mob angle. I totally get it. The guy pulls up to a rest stop, and then suddenly the truck disappears.
Yeah. It always amuses me too. You mentioned that because I think sometimes people are like, whatever. Is the mafia really a thing anymore? And then we just heard about that NBA scandal.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
the mafia was 100%. Involved in that. So now they're still out there. They're probably a little smarter and tech savvy. It's not just breaking legs with baseball bats anymore, but they're still out there.
Wow, yeah.
Oh, good stuff.
$35 billion. That's a lot.
That's a lot of dough.
It does feel like technology can help out there. Cameras on the trucks, like who's in the truck, who's not in the truck, who's touching the truck.
Real-time locationing. And
that'll thwart the mafia. Not that I have anything wrong with the mafia. I don't want them coming after me.
All right, that's officially on the podcast record.
Gonna have a horse head in my bed when I get back.
What would be the modern equivalent of that?
I don't know.
Like your Tesla steering wheel or something?
Something like that, right?
All right, what's on your radar, Dean?
So, flying cars. We've been talking about this a lot.
Haven't we not been down this road before? Or whatever?
Matt, do you want a flying car? Were you not bought in by, I don't know what age you are, but certainly by the time Yes, thank you. The Jetsons. Yeah. We were supposed to have flying cars by now.
We want to talk about a show that sets some impossible standards for the world.
So the Wall Street Journal has a wonderful little article that we'll share in the notes that we might finally be close to the era of flying cars. So here it is. Actually, what is being developed are called these eVTOLs, which are electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, right? So they don't have any wheels or anything like that. There's a company called Pivotal. They have a product called BlackFly that this particular journalist went out and participated, utilized, and it's scary how good it is, and it's scary how realistic that you really could have a flying car at this point in time. They're apparently easy to learn. He went through the whole process of getting in it, flying it. It's somewhat automated. It's a little weird in that it does a vertical takeoff, so it's just like you're sitting there and then whoop, you go straight, but you're like leaning back, like you're an astronaut taking off, and then it kind of levels out as you go into cruise mode. So there's a couple modes with this particular thing. So, but all that, even though it sounded difficult, it's really easy apparently. You don't need a pilot's license, because these particular vehicles are less than 254 pounds, if you can believe that. They're really light that can do that. Now, here's the one problem, though. It's only got a 20-minute range. So, I guess you could run to the store and back. But
maybe get to work, depending on where you live.
What's that, Matt?
Does it come with a parachute?
Yes, it does come with a parachute. Yes, because the article, I know, bro, I'm in. Because the article talks about, and they fly at about 300 feet or so. But if there was some kind of issue, like one of the blades goes down, whatever, you hit ducks in the air or Canadian geese around here, you got a little parachute that you pop and whoop, and it's supposed to, bring you down nice and easy. The other issue that I have is that there's no rules of the road. Like once you start flying, there's
no signs up there.
There's no signs. We can't have this cluster of people.
What does a turn signal mean when you can go any, up, down, left, right, or
it doesn't mean anything. That's right. So anyway, I think we're getting a little closer, bro. I think that we might actually, I don't know what this thing costs. I'm sure it's,
Can we figure out the autonomous driving on the road thing?
Oh, you want to do that first and then start flying?
Yeah.
You're
Baby
such a naysayer. You're such a naysayer.
Come on. All right, I got to ask you, Pivotal, is it PVTOL?
No, it is actually PIVOTAL.
Well, that is a missed opportunity.
That is a missed Matt, there's an ongoing joke that if you have a startup company, you don't have any vowels in your name.
You got to take them out.
Yeah, you got to.
Well, then I figured also, because these are the VTOLs, I figured that would be how they would use that as part of the name too. Again, they clearly didn't consult a good marketing person when they came up with this company name.
They need to call you next time. So what's on your?
I'm available.
Yeah, what's on your radar?
All right, so here's science is finally answering a question that maybe you didn't realize you needed to have answered. But why do onions make us cry? Now, we've known for a long time that there is a particular chemical compound, a compound that is released when you cut into an onion called propanethiol S oxide.
Oh,
that is a chemical irritant that makes makes us cry. Is the eye sting. But what no one was quite sure about was why it happens so quickly and so easily, and how efficient the process kind of is, essentially, for lack of a better term.
You cut into an onion, boom.
Exactly.
It's like almost instantaneous.
So we have some scientists at Cornell University that have actually done some studies and figured it out using a lot of high-speed photography and a little bit of AI and computer modeling to figure this out. And essentially what they found is that an onion has, we all know an onion has layers. We've all seen Shrek. But those layers, each layer has a very thin, super thin skin on each end of it. That skin has little pockets kind of underneath of it. Again, this is all almost at a microscopic level this is happening. But, little bits of that compound, that liquid is kind of underneath that skin, held there by tension. And when you cut into it, it gets released. And eventually at a point where it just breaks, it breaks that skin and releases it. Now, here is the crazy part of it. So it releases at what chefs typically cut at a 3.3 feet per second, but the blast of droplets that comes out of an onion comes out at speeds between 16 and 131 feet per second.
What?
For context, someone coughing, a typical cough goes at a speed of about 66 feet per second. So potentially that stuff is spraying out
double the speed
twice
of a cough.
As fast as a cough.
Wow.
And that's why it's able to get into your eyes so quickly.
Darn.
So now, basically, you might think like, all right,
nature is unbelievable.
What does this matter? Does this really mean anything? Well, they did obviously give some tips for like cutting a little bit slower can help out because it breaks that skin a little more cleanly and makes it so that it doesn't necessarily explode out quite as easily.
Got it.
But the other part of this too that they were exploring is that they found out that this might also can very much be a part of the spread of bacteria. So if there is any bacteria that happens to be on the surface of that onion as well, if you're making that cut, the explosiveness, which again we don't really notice, but that explosion may also release bacteria and get people sick. And they think that may have been tied to like a recent McDonald's outbreak of onions.
Okay.
There was onions that spread bacteria, whatever.
Right.
This could be a reason behind that. Is if the cutting process is not right, or if there's bacteria that's built up on there. So some good might come out of this.
I don't have to hold the match in my mouth anymore to try and keep the little wife still, trying to keep yourself from screwing up and just hold this match in your mouth.
Yeah, it's not helping, right?
Just slow it down a little bit. I mean, I suppose you can wear some eyewear if you have to, but apparently like just slower cutting and a slower cutting and a nice sharp knife so that you're getting a good clean cut without breaking that surface tension of that skin.
So I'm not doing it. Dull knives and slamming it through there.
Yeah, probably not. I'm gonna try that because I don't know. I tend to be fairly methodical when I cut to not go too much there. And plus, I'm a big fan of the chopper. Like if it needs to be chopped, slap the onion there and chop it. But I'll have to think about that the next time I'm cutting an onion. I'll put that to the test.
There you go.
See how
That's
all
a good
works.
one. That's a good one.
All right, that is what is on our radar this week. Matt Sterner with Honeywell, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate having you on the show.
Yeah, guys.
Until next time, folks, stop shipping air. And if you are going to, make sure you know exactly who's picking up your freight. Maybe that is the solution.
There you go.
Is you just if you think someone's stealing your freight, just ship one that's nothing but air.
Yes.
Be like, joke's on you.
Gotcha.
I don't know how well that would actually work. All right, folks, we'll see you out there in the nation.